Hello everyone, and welcome back to another forecast update. I hope you are doing well and having a great Friday. Tonight we're going to be talking a little bit about the severe weather threat over the next couple of days, mainly into this weekend. And then for quite a bit of the video, or most of the video, we'll be talking about the tropics and the area that has a potential to develop into a system into parts of the Caribbean and into the Gulf of Mexico. But that'll be the main topics for this video, and I will have chapters in this video, so again, feel free to skip around to any part of the video. If y'all want to see the severe weather threat in that part of the video, feel free to go to that part, which will be the first part, and feel free to go to the tropics part of the video if y'all want to see that as well. But yeah, so we'll go ahead and get started. So first, looking at the 01Z day 1 convective outlook for today on Friday, September the 20th. And so we have a marginal risk here into parts of far northern Oklahoma, into parts of eastern Kansas, southeastern Nebraska, southwestern Iowa, and northwestern Missouri. And then we also have a risk up here into Montana and parts of northwest North Dakota. There is no tornado risk with any of these risks, and there is a wind risk with both of these. Both of these risks here, the one in the central U.S. and then one in two parts of the north central United States. And then there only is a hail risk, and that is a 5% hail risk in the risk in the central United States. First, looking at the 0Z HRRR, and then first we'll look at parts of the central United States. So again, looking at the 0Z HRRR, over the next couple of hours, you will have some bands of storms. Actually, zoom in here to our south central United States sector so y'all can see a little bit better. But we will have some storms moving to the east and just kind of maybe maintaining some of their strength as they move through parts of Kansas and into Oklahoma, and this will be over the next couple of hours into early tomorrow on Saturday, and those will continue. And then you still do have some storm coverage, tomorrow into very early tomorrow morning, and really those storms will just kind of ride on this kind of boundary right here and continue to move east. And then you may have some re-intensification tomorrow morning into parts of Missouri there, but again, those will continue to move east over the next several hours, and places in eastern Kansas and northeastern Oklahoma will have a chance to see a storm over the next couple of hours and tonight for that area. And then we'll move up to the north central United States sector. We're actually going to the northwest sector, and so we'll go back here. And so as you can see right here into Montana and North Dakota, you will have some storms moving to the east over the next couple of hours, and you could have a slight but maybe a strong band or two of storms that move into northwestern North Dakota over the next couple of hours, and then those will continue to move east, and those storms really should be out of Montana very early tomorrow on Saturday, and then those will pretty much be out of North Dakota by tomorrow, maybe early to mid-morning tomorrow on Saturday. So now looking at the day 2 outlook for tomorrow on Saturday, September the 21st, 2024. And first we'll start off with this slight risk here. So we do have a slight risk into parts of the Texas Panhandle and then into southeast New Mexico, and around that is a marginal risk. And then looking up into parts of the midwestern United States, we have another marginal risk all the way from parts of Wisconsin down to the southwest into parts of southern Minnesota, central Iowa. Quite a bit of the state of Iowa there is included in that marginal risk. Then into southeastern Nebraska and far northeastern Kansas with that marginal risk. And then looking to the east, we have another marginal risk, and this extends all the way from parts of northern Virginia into West Virginia, into parts of Maryland, and then into parts of western Pennsylvania. and there is a tornado risk with this risk into parts of New Mexico and into the Texas Panhandle. And then looking at our wind risk, we do have a 15% risk here into the Panhandle of Texas and then into New Mexico, and around that is a 5% wind risk. Then up here into the Midwest, we have another 5% wind risk for tomorrow, and then into parts of the Mid-Atlantic, into Pennsylvania, Maryland, West Virginia, and Virginia, we have another 5% wind risk for those areas. And then same with the hail risk, a 15% hail risk down into the Texas Panhandle, and then into parts of New Mexico, and then into Colorado here. I apologize, I don't think I included that in the risk earlier, but we do have a marginal risk into southern Colorado as well. Same with that wind risk, and same as that hail risk there that goes into Colorado. And then looking up into the Midwest again, same thing there, 5% hail risk there, and then a 5% hail risk into parts of the Mid-Atlantic. First, looking at Texas and New Mexico, we'll start out early tomorrow morning, so you will start to have coverage of showers tomorrow morning across parts of the Panhandle of Texas and into New Mexico, and then even into parts of the Panhandle of Oklahoma. And so really these storms get going kind of mid to late morning tomorrow in New Mexico, and those head east into the Panhandle of Oklahoma and Texas. And then you do have even more storms that form behind that initial line into parts of Colorado, New Mexico, and then even into parts of Oklahoma and Texas. And those head east, and you could have you will have a little bit of a tornado risk with these storms, and also a wind risk with this, especially in those longer bands or kind of bowing segments of storms. And those will persist throughout much of the day tomorrow for Texas, even into late tomorrow night, and even a nasty band it's showing up on the 18Z HRRR into the Panhandle of Oklahoma, then into Texas as well, and then even into parts of Missouri as well, even into Kansas, some storms showing up there. And then those continue all the way into even early Sunday morning on the HRRR here. And we'll look at the NAM real quick just to compare. And so very similar look here on both of the models. Those storms initiate, I think, just slightly slower on the 3 kilometer NAM, but still the coverage is about the same, and you will have some nasty storms moving into some of these areas. And it even shows kind of a, not really an MCS, but clusters of storms that form here into maybe Kansas or Oklahoma very late tomorrow night into early on Sunday morning. And then you have those that lift to the north and then move up there into parts of Missouri, Kansas, and Oklahoma for tomorrow. And then we'll look at our low-level jet here, and we'll go back to the HRRR for this, and then we'll go to the 18Z. So looking here, you won't have a real strong low-level jet, but it's still there, and you will have some instability, plenty of instability actually into these areas. And so really the period that probably needs to be watched is maybe later tomorrow evening into tomorrow night, when you have that low-level jet that amplifies just a little bit into some of these areas. And some areas could see, here's an area of maybe pushing a 30 knot low-level jet there, but even into the lower and mid 20 knot range for parts of Texas, even into Oklahoma. And if we look at Cape here, you have some Cape into that area with that low-level jet. That is a lower 30 knot low-level jet right there with the green colors. So again, you will have to watch out for that. And you may have a period where you just have most of the storm coverage kind of move to the north, and they really start to form along this line kind of right here. And so that should be kind of the main threat for tomorrow into New Mexico, Texas, Oklahoma, and into Colorado. Now still looking at tomorrow on Saturday, and then we're looking at parts of the Midwest. And so storms will kind of start to form tomorrow afternoon into tomorrow evening across parts of Wisconsin, Minnesota, Iowa, especially into parts of Wisconsin and Iowa. You will have those storms beginning to move through, and maybe a damaging line of storms potentially moving into or through, parts of Wisconsin, even into Iowa, and then farther to the south, even into Illinois. And then you'll have that coverage that continues to the east of those storms from the southwest. And so this will kind of cut off some of the instability for these storms into these areas. But those continue, and really you'll have those storms, kind of the strong to severe storms move out late tomorrow night into early on Sunday. But I'll go ahead and play this back here a little slower so y'all can see. But again, we'll have those storms start to kind of form into Wisconsin, Minnesota, and then into Iowa, and those will get stronger by tomorrow afternoon and tomorrow evening on Saturday. And those will head kind of east and southeast, with that other kind of cluster and band of showers and storms moving through late tomorrow night into early on Sunday. And then looking into parts of the mid-Atlantic here, we'll go back to tomorrow morning. So you will have some showers beginning into parts of Pennsylvania, West Virginia, Maryland, and then you will have those storms start to intensify and strengthen maybe early tomorrow afternoon. And then you could have some isolated storms moving into parts of Virginia there, and then you have more storms forming up to the north tomorrow afternoon into tomorrow evening across parts of even New York into Pennsylvania on the 18ZHRRR here. And those will continue throughout the day, and even some storms moving into North Carolina and Southern Virginia, and then into Maryland here, and then even into Pennsylvania and New York there. And those will head mainly kind of to the south here, and those will persist through quite a large part of the day tomorrow, even into early Sunday morning. You could still have some storms lingering into parts of Maryland, Virginia, and even North Carolina for tomorrow into Sunday. Now, lastly, looking at the day 3 severe weather outlook from the Storm Prediction Center. And so this will be for Sunday, September the 22nd, 2024. And we have a marginal risk right here, all the way from parts of central Missouri to the south, kind of to the west and southwest, into parts of southeastern Kansas, central and western Oklahoma, and then into parts of northern Texas here. And then with our probabilistic, it is a 5% at this range for the day 3 outlook, because the 5% risk for day 3 is an automatic marginal risk at this time, but that is for Sunday's severe weather threat. So we won't be looking at any of the short range models for Sunday's severe weather threat, but we will be looking at the GFS and European real quick here. And so you can see our system that will have that severe weather threat on Sunday. But looking here on the GFS and looking at surface-based cape here, you will have definitely some cape that builds into parts of Texas, Oklahoma, into parts of Kansas and Missouri, and that will stay and kind of not intensify, but you will have an increase of cape throughout the day as you normally do. But that instability should be cut off by late Sunday night into Monday. And then we'll look at you can kind of see a better look at this trough here. So here's our trough that will be responsible for the severe weather threat. And so we do have definitely a positively tilted trough that is leaning to the right, kind of sloped here, but that is definitely a positively tilted trough there. And then you will have that moisture with the system that continues up into these areas, and you will have the GFS showing an area of slightly less moist air. I'm not sure what it's picking up on there. Probably just storms eating up at that instability there, possibly. But you will have but you will have plenty of moisture ahead of this system, so we'll have to watch that. And there might be a little bit of a low level jet with this, not a very strong one, but I wouldn't rule out a small tornado threat with this. So we'll see how that plays out with tomorrow's SPC outlook from the Storm Prediction Center. But yeah, that is pretty much it for Sunday's severe weather threat at this time. So lastly, we'll be looking at the tropics here, and we'll start off with the National Hurricane Center, looking at the 7-day tropical weather outlook here. So again, we'll look at this mainly in the video, but first we'll start out with these two areas out here into the central Atlantic. And so here you have an area that has a 10% chance of developing into a tropical cyclone within the next 7 days. And so this is the remnants of Gordon, and it has decreased in confidence of it developing again. So that's definitely a good thing. But again, it does have a 10% chance of developing into a cyclone within the next 7 days. And then we have this area here to the west of that, and this has again a 10% chance of developing into a cyclone within the next 7 days. And so really won't be talking about these areas much this video, but again, those do have both a 10% chance of developing within the next 7 days. But then we look at our area into the Gulf of Mexico, and then into the Caribbean here. And so this has been not upgraded, but the chance of this developing, the confidence has increased for this but this area, excuse me. It is not a system yet, but we'll talk about that in the weather models in just a second. But it does have a 60% chance of developing into a tropical cyclone within the next 7 days here. And so this is the area we're really going to need to watch over the next several days. And so that's what we're going to do for the rest of the video, is just break down this area here. But yeah, this does have a 60% chance of developing within the next 7 days, and we'll look at this in just a second. So now looking at the weather models for this area of potential development. So first, starting off with the 18Z GFS, and we'll go through the global models here. We'll go through the European, and then obviously the GFS right now. Then we'll look at the Canadian model, and then the Icon model. And then after that, we'll look at the ensemble models, and we will look at the EPS ensembles and the GEFS ensembles here. And then between each of these, not each of these, but these global models here, we'll kind of discuss some of the factors that would contribute to the development of a system into the Gulf or the Caribbean. But again, first starting off with the 18Z GFS here. And first we'll go to we'll go to Friday night tonight, and then we'll go to Saturday. So you have this area of of storms and that moisture down there into the Caribbean, and then again, nothing really develops over the next couple of days. But then going into early next week on Monday, you do have some storms starting to show up on the GFS here. Then you get a low pressure that develops there, that goes away, and then that continues, and then you just have this moisture that kind of hangs around into Tuesday, and then you finally get a low pressure that develops into possibly Wednesday into Thursday. And then here is midday Wednesday, you have a 1002 low pressure that develops then into a tropical storm. And that will continue to the northwest and eventually maybe to the north. And so Again, by this time, this is Thursday night into early on Friday. This is 150 hours out, and this would have it as a hurricane, basically, into the Gulf of Mexico, Category 1 hurricane. And then it would continue to go to the north and have it possibly as a strong Category 1 or a low-end Category 2 hurricane. But again, this would be for next Friday night into early on Saturday. So this is very far out still, and we have a lot to figure out between now and even the middle and early and middle of next week for this system. But then that would have it basically making a landfall into Alabama, or the basically Alabama there, or into the panhandle of Florida on the GFS, and then we'll continue that out there. But again, this is still very far out at this time. And so first we'll look at our relative humidity values, and this is just a look at the moist and dry air. So the moist air is the kind of bluish green color here. You could call it mainly blue, but and then the dry air is the brown color. So you can really see all the moisture here in the Caribbean on the GFS, and that continues to the north, and then you have that development of a low pressure, and so you eventually have that going up into the Gulf and then making a landfall. And so one of the major things we're going to have to watch out for is one, kind of how quickly this system will develop into a storm. Will it develop into a tropical storm early next week, or will it be the middle of next week, or even later next week? That's really the main questions here. And so the quicker this system is able to develop into a stronger storm before it enters kind of into the Gulf, the longer it'll be able to maintain or even intensify further, if that makes sense. And so what I mean by this is, if you have a storm, let's just go right here. So if you have this storm, if this would be a basically, I would say a Category 2 or 3, even a Category 4 hurricane, excuse me, or at least a major hurricane here. And again, I'm not saying there will be a major hurricane. I'm just using this for an example. So if you would have a strong hurricane out here into the Gulf, and basically it would wrap this moisture around a lot better compared to a weak tropical storm or a weak Category 1 hurricane. And so the better you're going to have, the better low-level circulation here that you have around this system, kind of the better you're going to have that moisture wrapped around the system. And so it's going to kind of create its own environment, if that makes sense. So instead of all this dry air getting wrapped into the circulation here, you would have more of a defined area of moisture instead of this dry air just getting wrapped straight into it as a lower end storm, if that makes sense. But again, that's really going to be the main thing we'll have to watch, is the dry air and how it affects this system, how early this system is able to develop. But kind of getting off of that and going to we'll go to the heights here. And so it's in not pretty good, but I feel like most of the models have been agreeing with there being a ridge to the east. And so the majority of the models continue to kind of show a system into the Gulf, but again, we can't rule out any systems developing that go to the northeast. But the general consensus here is moving into the Gulf. But again, we'd have a ridge to the east, and then we kind of have some troughing up here into parts of the central United States, and that would eventually pull that system in, and then move it into the United States, specifically parts of the southern United States. This is just on the GFS, by the way. So that's just another thing we'll have to look out for, is kind of how strong this ridge will be So it looks like it does weaken a little bit as that system gets closer, but usually these ridges, or these areas of high pressure do usually weaken a little bit as a low pressure moves towards the area. And then now we'll look at upper level winds, and so this is another thing we'll have to really watch. And so this system will basically be in an environment early next week that's very favorable for tropical development. It's going to encounter little to no shear that's affecting it negatively, and so this will continue up to the northwest, again shown on the GFS. And so again, you don't really have any shear showing up that would disrupt the development of the storm maybe until mid to late next week, I would say, just on the GFS here. And then obviously when it gets closer to land and makes a landfall, it would interact with some shear, yeah, that's another thing we'll have to continue to watch here. And really here on the 500 millibar geopotential heights here, you can really see that troughing up into the central United States, possibly into the middle of next week. And so the real question is how quickly, again, this dry air, I know we talked about it a little bit in one of my last videos, and it's just how quickly this dry air is able to kind of get into the southern United States and interact with this system. And so the quicker this trough is able to move through, the more dry air you're going to have behind it. And so in one of the last videos, we were kind of talking about, will this trough kind of pull the dry air out instead of moving it down to the southeast into the Gulf? But it looks like now we might have a chance of that dry air getting pushed into the Gulf. And so this would be a good thing for the system, getting dry air into it, so it would limit it from intensifying any further. But again, I mean, besides watching the system, we'll have to watch this trough and see how quickly it comes through. If it comes through late or even early, the later it comes through, the more dry air you would have kind of closer to landfall, if that would make sense. But again, it's still 160, 170 hours out. So I'm just saying this is a possible solution. I'm not saying this is going to happen, but just looking at some of the factors towards this system. So a later arrival of this trough would mean more dry air towards the latter part of the system, and then the earlier it would come through, probably the more dry air or not as moist air that this system would encounter as it would go into the Gulf, if that makes any sense at all. I know I'm kind of just talking about a lot of things at once, but I'm just trying to explain it as best I can. But again, I'll just show that there for the rest of that run. But again, we can't really look too much at the system and the specifics until we get into, honestly, the 100-hour mark or 120-hour mark, because it's just too far out to really look at specifics. Because there's really no way to determine where the system might make a landfall, or even if it'll develop into a system. But going off the GFS here and then going to the European, and we won't take as long as a look on the European, but we'll still look at it. I won't explain what I did on the GFS, but I'll still show the areas that we'll have to watch. And we'll go back to we'll stay on the 18Z European run here. I'm kind of stumbling up on words here. I'm sorry about that. But again, have that area down here into the Caribbean, and then going to the 12Z European, that would go farther out. You would still have, it kind of shows this system getting developed into the southwest Gulf of Mexico, and then it would have it making a landfall as basically just a tropical storm on Sunday. Not this Sunday, but next Sunday. So there is quite a bit to figure out with this system. Again, And then here's another thing we'll have to watch as well. If the system does get developed out here into the Caribbean, then it will have a lot more time to intensify before making a potential landfall in the United States. But if the European were to happen, it would have less time, but it would likely encounter some of this this dry air a little quicker, and we'll have to watch that as well for that development. So we'll go to the 500 millibar heights here, and so this would basically have this trough move through kind of in the middle of next week, but it would have it a lot earlier than what the GFS, not a lot earlier, but a little bit earlier than what the GFS would show. We'll go here to the moisture again, but again, there's that system on the European. And then looking at 200 millibar winds here, upper level winds, again, really no shear is going to be affecting this system on its way to development and developing until it gets closer to land in the Gulf of Mexico, and then it would interact with that trough and eventually head to the north there. But that is it for the European model, and then we'll quickly look at the icon, and we'll look at the Canadian and icon, and then we'll look at the ensembles, and then that'll be it for the video. But first looking at the Canadian here, it does have a development of a system finally, and this would have it near the developing near the Yucatan Peninsula here, and then it would have it as basically a tropical storm by midweek, and then it would eventually have it strengthening into a Category 1 hurricane potentially, and then just lingering around basically, and eventually making a landfall possibly in Louisiana. But again, this is 200 hours out, still way far out. The previous run before that does not even show a system there. It does, but it has it quite a bit weaker. So again, we really can't talk about this too much as far as landfall, but anything really containing landfall about the U.S. should be counted out for right now, and we really should only be worried about the development of it into the Gulf or the Caribbean. But again, that is the Canadian model. And then lastly, looking at the icon to finish out our global models, and we'll look at the 18Z to start with, and then it has that moisture there into the Caribbean, and then this would be this Sunday, and then to Monday, Tuesday, and then eventually Wednesday. And this will be similar to what the Canadian shows. The icon is in pretty good agreement with the Canadian as far as kind of the not deepening, but the intensifying of the potential system, and then that would have it kind of moving to the north and eventually moving into Florida as maybe a low-end tropical storm on Thursday into Friday. But this would be a lot better scenario if this were to happen, and it would just be a low-end tropical storm upon landfall. But that is the icon there, and we'll look at our 200 millibar winds here. And so this system would encounter some upper level shear before it makes a landfall on the icon, so that would probably be one of the limiting factors for the intensification of the system. So that's just what the icon shows, but that is it for the icon. And then lastly, we'll look at the GEFS and the EPS ensemble. I know y'all are probably getting pretty tired of me talking, but I'll kind of finish up the video here, and we'll end with this. But we'll go to what we've been looking at, the ensemble members on the GEFS. And again, we'll start off with tomorrow on Saturday. So again, not much really showing up here for our members. And then finally, by Monday into Tuesday, we have the members showing up and showing some some activity here, or signals you could say, into the Caribbean. And you eventually have that really getting a strong signal into Monday, Tuesday, especially Tuesday into Wednesday, and then by Thursday you have a very large signal here for the development of that system. But again, we can't rule out this system going to the west, to the east, straight to the north, because the members here, you have quite a few members towards kind of north of Cuba, even into parts of kind of western Cuba, and then all the way out here into the western Gulf of Mexico on the GEFS ensemble. So that's just something to consider, all these different paths that this system, potential system, could take. I keep wanting to say system, but it has not formed yet. But so that'll be it for the GEFS ensemble, and then lastly we'll look at the EPS real quick, and we'll show that. Since EPS ensemble, same thing here, kind of has that finally developing into a signal there early next week into Tuesday, and then into Wednesday. And again, does not have it as a strongest signal as the GFS does, but again, still a kind of a potent signal there. And then it has that signal increasing into Thursday and eventually Friday. So this would have it as a quite a bit later day at finally intensifying into a system, and then further into parts of the United States. But the EPS mainly contains the system into the Gulf of Mexico, but again, there's always that possibility. So really that'll be it for the models, and again, we're just going to have to take it day by day and really just look at this system and how it develops. So really the main things, again, we'll have to watch. I know I've said this a lot, but as this system kind of moves into the Gulf of Mexico or throughout the Caribbean, again, if it's able to develop and intensify into a storm into the Caribbean, then that'll be not a lot more, but bad news for people into the Gulf of Mexico. And then if it would have a later intensification, that would be a lot better for people into the Gulf or even outside of the Gulf. But again, I do think we'll have a landfall maybe somewhere in the Gulf of Mexico, but we can't rule out that going to the east or farther east there. But again, that'll be it for the weather models. So that's going to be it for tonight's update. I do appreciate all of y'all who click on my video and watch my videos. I really do appreciate it. I do apologize for the long video. I did not mean to make a video this long, but it was just kind of my deep dive into the tropics for tonight. And so I doubt I'll have a video up tomorrow night, but I might have one out Sunday. But I highly doubt I'll have one up tomorrow night, but I will try to get one out Sunday night if I can. But again, I do appreciate all of y'all kind of tuning in and watching my videos recently and my updates. I'm trying to stay as consistent as I can and just give y'all updates so y'all can stay up to date with the tropics and the severe weather threats. But again, I do appreciate all of y'all watching, and I hope y'all have a great Friday night.